Okay, we have a wonderful case sent in today. It looks like it's a edentulous upper arch against remaining teeth on the lower arch, and the patient would like to have a solution to replace his or her remaining teeth on the lower arch. So let's go ahead and take a peek. And if you'll notice here, what I would like to point out, very well done here, is some wonderful planning of the CEREC data. Honestly, it looks like it's done from a wax up, which is totally fine, especially for this many teeth. Um, and it's a great import of all the data. It's fantastically done. I think it's a great example of the power of what we're doing here. So kudos on that. So the next step. So let's take a peek here. I'm going to start on tooth number 31, actually 231. So if we take a look, what I'm seeing here is a couple of things. One, the first and foremost that pops out of my mind right away is our occlusal plane. Our occlusal plane, as you can see here, is tilted up. In an ideal world, it is more level, like so that we have ideal axis loading. So in this case, what I would prefer to do is probably something along the lines of this. The issue becomes, in doing this, the issue becomes that adjacent root. How close can we get? And then how close can we get, and then not have the implant way over here and have all this cantilever. So in an ideal world, it would look something like this, but that's not really all that possible in this particular case. So this may be a case where we cannot have ideal loading, and instead we have to go to as it was planned, which is like so. So the goal there would be to minimize how much ever of that we can. The other question I have is it necessary to go back to second molar occlusion? Again, typically on edentulous areas, I'm not finding that when we're opposing the edentulous arch. Certainly if we end up doing a fixed hybrid or something along that lines along the top, we usually don't extend those back to the second molar anyway. We have a good first molar here, so maybe this implant is not necessary. But I would not let this off-angle situation prevent us from not doing this particular implant here. So again, it's just a matter of making sure that it's planned properly, make sure that we accept the compromise that we're taking, and then going from there. So other than that, it's in pretty darn good shape there. So that gives us an idea of what's going on there. Lengthwise, technically we could go, again, assuming that this implant nerve is marked in the right place, which certainly it looks to be pretty close to the right area. We could go 11.5 millimeters here. Could we go 13? And technically we could. Access is going to be a little bit of an issue, my assumption. So I think 11.5 is fine. Let's go ahead and jump over here to 18. And the same thing holds true on 18. Is the bigger question is, do we need to do an implant that far back? Or what benefits are we going to gain? But again, this plan looks pretty darn good in the sense that it's centered on these teeth, assuming that these teeth are waxed up correctly in the right dimensions and so forth. We're at the good bone level. Everything looks very nice here. I do have questions about the distance between the two. I also am beginning to have some questions in regards to the integration. So if we take a look here, we can see that this tooth is chopped off right there, and there's tooth here. So maybe our integration data is not as accurate as we initially expected, and you can see right here as well that it's off a little bit. So I would have some questions about the integration data on this one as well. Just an area to double check. I may be wrong. It may be the way the model was scanned, that the teeth were adjusted on the stone model. Because this does look like a scan directly from the stone model. So these are the issues that we need to look at in this case. In looking at number 19, we're relatively tight in approximation to the adjacent tooth. So I would probably in this case want to slide that over just a hair and maybe do something like so. So I have just a little bit more space. And then again here, my concern is it looks like the second molar is bigger than the first molar, and is that going to be a reality? Are we going to want to have that much force placed on the implant? So we may end up going with a smaller first molar, smaller second molar, and adjust these teeth. But all of this is based on the wax up. But the plan itself looks very nice and very well done. Um, the The other thing that we can see here is that our nerve is definitely in the wrong position here. So this is one of the things I would like to look at. Now again, it's not a matter of whether it matters, because it doesn't matter, because the nerve is way over here, let's say, and the implant's way over here. But again, I just like to have things cleaned up a little bit to make sure that we're on track. And here, the other thing I like to be sure of is that we're not making a mistake. And when we see these issues, it leads to questioning whether or not we recognize these. And excuse me, there'll be times where we do need to recognize these things. So I would like to have that corrected. And just briefly, to give us an idea of how we would correct something like that, we would take a look here. And what I can tell you here is that we have a single point from here to here, and that's definitely not good. So, and we can see right here clearly our nerve is down here, the line is right there. So what we would need to do in this case is go back and remark the nerve, because we are way off, way off. So I would encourage us to do this. If we're going to do it diligently and nicely, so that we can make sure that it's correct, because we don't want to leave anything to chance, and certainly we don't want others to assume that we're not doing it correctly. Next, we'll move over to the anterior bridge. And here, the other thing I want to, this is a good image to point this out as well. One of the things that we have to be concerned about here, again, it may not be the situation, but we can see some shadowing here of the scan. So one of the issues of the CEREC integration and of the scan could be that there's some movement by the patient. And in fact, in closer inspection here, we can see how nicely this is smooth, and here we see a little bit of shadowing. So my guess would be from this scan and further inspection is that there has been some patient movement during the scan, and this creates inaccuracies. And in fact, CCAT in this particular case probably would not accept this data for guide fabrication. But let's just forget those things for the time being and just go on to the planning stage here. And what I would like to point out is this looks to be a little bit out of the bone right here. It may come up to here. I would probably have a tendency to err on being a little bit deeper. And one of the reasons I like to err on deeper is because if I go to the mouth, and when I do this, if I see that I end up having bone here, I could very easily back this implant up. Whereas if we err here and we find that the implant's out, we either have to graft or then we have to go deeper. And oftentimes going deeper is not easy for many of us. So we want to kind of err on that side there. And then if looking at the last implant here, again, one of the same things here, we might need to graft because of the thinness of the bone there, so we may want to drop this down and be able to have the ability to back this up. So in looking at this, the vast majority of this was planned very well. The two bigger concerns that I have in this particular case are certainly the CEREC integration and the potential patient movement in the scan. These do create artifacts and inaccuracies, so we want to be certain that everything is done well. Again, thank you for sending the case.